Welcome into Daily Faceoff Live, your go-to source for everything hockey. Live every weekday at noon Eastern.
Welcome in. It's January 25th, and this is Daily Faceoff Live. Tyler Yaremchuk and Mike McKenna with you on a Wednesday afternoon. Mike, Franklin's barbecue on the lid. That's a sharp-looking hat.
You know, it's just about my time that I spent in Austin, Texas, having some of the best barbecue in the world, and I like to show it off and prove that I was there. That's all they are. Commemorative gifts, commemorative things you take home, just a status symbol. That's all it is, Tyler. Yeah.
Love it. Let's talk some hockey. There is a lot going on around the NHL, a lot of headlines to get to. So let's throw 2 minutes and 30 seconds up on the clock and start with the much anticipated debut of Rick Tocchet, I suppose. I don't know. The Canucks fans really didn't give their new bench boss much of a warm welcome last night. There were some boos. There was a jersey thrown on the ice as well. And Mike, I'll be honest, I don't get it. Rick Tocchet's not the bad guy in this situation. I get maybe throwing the jersey as a message to management and ownership saying, hey, the fan base is not happy. But I'm kind of hoping Canucks fans, maybe they just needed the first game to let them hear it a bit, give them some sort of welcoming. But I hope they're a little bit more open going forward because Rick Tocchet's not the bad guy.
Yeah, I think they were just cleaning out the pipes. I hope that's what was happening amongst the fan base. And honestly, I would throw every one of those blue jerseys on the ice and trade them for the black, yellow, and red unis that they had on last night in Vancouver. Dude, that jersey is what the Vancouver Canucks should be wearing. It's menacing. It's sinister. It doesn't have that stupid orca coming out of the sea. Sorry, I shouldn't say stupid. It's a ridiculous looking logo, if you ask me. Anyway, here's the deal, man. Like, the Canucks clobbered the Hawks last night, and it wasn't because of tactical reasons. It was purely the players, to me, showing their new coach, we're going to play for you. At least tonight, we need to make this happen, and we got to send a message to our fan base on home ice that we're not throwing in the towel on this season or on the team in general. And, I mean, look at that. Vancouver drew through 3 penalties in the first period. Like, high danger chances, 22-6 in favor of Vancouver. I know it's against the Hawks. I don't care who it's against, Tyler. They came out, they made a point. Guys like Luke Shen and Sheldon Dries really brought physicality. Kuzmenko had 2 goals. And guess where they scored them all? Right at the net front. Tyler, do you think Rick Tocchet was happy to see his team go to the front of the net and score some greasy ones?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And, Bo Horvat got his 31st of the year. The Canucks trailed multiple times in that game, but they were clearly the better team, putting up close to 50 shots in the hockey game. They looked good. But my other thing, Mike, is, man, if they were to string together a good run here under Rick Tocchet and miss the playoffs by 6 points, it would almost make this whole situation even more frustrating if I was a Canucks fan, because why couldn't we just get an interim coach, suck for the rest of the year, and get a 10% better chance at the lottery? It feels almost counterproductive to what the Canucks are doing to go on a good late season run like they did last season.
Well, what is more apropos for the Canucks right now than mixed messaging, Tyler? Like, get used to it, man. It's all it's been for a couple of years. I don't see that changing in the future because you're right. Like, I mean, wouldn't you love to have a better crack at Bedard? But as we may say in a second here, what does 10% difference make in the lottery?
Well, that is a nice transition to our second topic. Gary Bettman speaking yesterday about, and he's had a couple of puzzling sound bites this season, not backing down from certain things like digital board ads. But here was Gary Bettman, the commissioner, on tanking, saying nobody tanks because we have a weighted lottery. You're not going to lose games to increase your odds by a couple of percentage points. That's silly. And frankly, suggesting tanking, I believe, is inconsistent with the professionalism that our players and our coaches have. He says nobody tanks. Mike, here's where I'll agree with Bettman a little bit. Yes, the professionalism of your players and coaches, 100%. There is not a single player in the NHL who is taking to the ice at any point from now till the end of the season going, hey, if we just lose this one, we got a better chance at Connor Bedard, because they really don't care. Coaches are coaching for their lives. But the idea that organizations aren't tanking is just so insane. You're telling me there's not a single GM who's watching his team lose to the Vancouver Canucks last night and given a little, yes, that's a big loss. We're a little bit closer. I know it's just a matter of a couple of percentage points. And yes, coaches and players maybe don't tank, but there are owners and there are general managers who love watching their teams slide down the standings in seasons like this one when there's a marquee prospect.
I mean, come on, Gary. Like, my dad wanted me to take the LSATs and become a lawyer when I finished up university. I don't know if I could do this with a straight face like Gary. Like, this is unbelievable. Of course, like players and coaches, they're not tanking, man. You're fighting for your next contract. You're fighting for your credibility for the coaches and players. But teams, are you kidding me? Yeah, the lottery's weighted. Exactly. That's exactly why. Like Anaheim last night,
Yeah.
Sportsnet ran a graphic between the second and third periods with the Canucks and Hawks game. Anaheim was at 25.5% at winning the Bedard sweepstakes. Columbus at 13.5%, and then the rest of the teams were in like 7 to 9%. You think Pat Verbeek's not looking at that and going, I really want 25% rather than 9? You think those like 12, 13 points don't matter? Of course they do. Like, dude, if I'm Pat Verbeek, the GM of the Ducks, Klingberg, Shattenkirk, Kulikov, see you later, your UFAs, go. Henrik, Silverberg, you got a home? Gibson, everybody out. You hang on to McTavish and Zegras. You try to get Bedard. You had Teemu Solani last night wrote Connor Bedard on a strip of tape.
We got the video.
Throws it up in a stall in the locker room. Take a look.
Look at this. I mean, if Teemu Solani, one of the all-time legends of your organization, is putting out videos like this, here's the nail in the coffin. Boom. Yeah. Connor Bedard's nameplate in the locker room. One of your all-time greats, a guy whose name is retired, is giving the thumbs up to the camera in your locker room. It's not like he's in a random locker room, man. He is literally in the Ducks room doing this. And Gary Bettman's going to say, come on, no one's tanking.
Dude, it's incredible, man. Like, it's so obvious. Like, if you're Verbeek, it's like, you got a bad contract? Sure, we'll take that too to get to the cap floor. That would be exciting, though. You think about that team, Tyler, if they did add him. Pretty exciting in Anaheim.
It would be. Let's move along and talk a little bit more about the tanking and Connor Bedard Watch up at dailyfaceoff.com. Every single day, we have a little tab at the top you can click, and we update the race and look at who has the best chance of getting that first overall pick. But here's just one more stat, actually, Mike. Since the salary cap era, if you were to look at the 10 worst teams by points percentage, 4 of them are from either this year right now or from the Connor McDavid year. 40% of the worst teams since the salary cap era are it's not exactly a coincidence. And like you said, we saw the Ducks and Coyotes last night going toe-to-toe. We saw the video from Solani. But Alex, if we could flash up kind of the bottom 5 or the bottom area of the draft lottery, taking a look at who has the best odds to land Connor Bedard right now. Here's a question I want to throw your way, Mike. We've done a lot of which team's the best fit, which team could bounce back the quickest. But I will say there is always a danger in tanking. I'm a guy who grew up in Edmonton. I saw the decade of darkness. Even when you get the first overall pick, sometimes it doesn't work out. But tearing things down to the studs isn't exactly the best idea, in my opinion, because if you don't get that first overall pick, it is going to be a lot more years of hurt. So like I said, we've talked a lot about who's the best fit, where does he fit in, who could be in the playoffs the quickest. I want to ask you, Mike, which one of these teams is the most screwed if their tanking plan doesn't work and they miss out on Connor Bedard?
Well, at least he's not Nail Yakupov. I think that, I don't know who's really most in trouble here, but I don't see Arizona as a great place for him to go right now. Like, that team is so far away. Keller's about the only player there that's in his prime. Gunther's moving towards it, and they have some others to be excited about, Michelli. But I don't see that club turning quickly. San Jose at least still has like Hurdle and Couture there, so that's not a great one either, or wouldn't be a terrible one. I think it's really Arizona. I'd love to see Bedard with Johnny Gaudreau in Columbus. I think that'd be a huge get for that organization. I think he'd be good in San Jose. I think Chicago. Well, you know what? Chicago's the other one besides Arizona, because they're still going to the bottom and they're a ways away, even though I think Bedard would, obviously change the complexion of it. So to me, it's a race between Arizona and Chicago to be the worst place for Bedard. And I think Arizona, even with the uncertainty, man, they're probably still 3 to 5 years away from an arena. If it gets approved, they got to be competitive. Just too many questions out there in the desert.
Yeah, I think that's a good point as well. If you're a team that's been kind of just struggling along for as long as they have. I mean, it's weird that the Yotes haven't found any sort of way to piece things together. Let's talk a little trade deadline here. You mentioned teams that could be sellers, but how about a piece that some buyers could be looking at? Our deadline countdown today on dailyfaceoff.com is all about Wild defenseman Matt Dumba, a pending UFA with a $6 million cap hit, a guy who's been healthy scratched twice in the last week on the Wild blue line as well. Frank Saravalli has a full kind of scouting report up on Dumba as a part of the article. He skates well. he's got good physical attributes, and he doesn't shy away from playing physically and using those skills. But at the same time, he's maybe not as offensive of a defenseman as maybe some people would have thought when you look at a guy who in the past has put up 50 points. Mike, when you look at Dumba, are you a little puzzled as to why the Minnesota Wild would maybe look to move him? Or is this a guy who you think they could really get some assets for and a guy who could help a contender?
Well, it's tough to say because the healthy scratch sure isn't going to help. Are you going to give up a first-round draft pick for somebody that couldn't crack a lineup? I don't see that happening. So, in some ways, the Wild may have depressed his value, but I also don't think they were married to the idea of trading him. They may keep him and use him in whatever role is necessary. And there's one thing about Dumba to me, like he's probably at this stage a 25, 30 point a year defenseman. He's not really doing anything on the power play like he used to. I still think he has a great shot. He just doesn't use it, Tyler. Like he's averaging like 2 shots on goal per game, which to me just says he doesn't have the mobility to get open and make that happen. So like if you're bringing him in, Dumba, let's say as like a third pair guy that could move up in your lineup into a second pair, I could see that. Frank points out in the article that Florida could be a really good landing spot, maybe even more as a hockey trade, as opposed to a straight up picks and prospects. Maybe that's good for Minnesota, who is trying to obviously go somewhere in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. I like that fit. And there are a couple others that were listed. So I just think that Dumba's he's so inconsistent that he's hard to get a read on, and if you really trust your development model, if you really trust your D coaches to give him some structure and try to help him, and you're willing to invest in him, maybe you look a little bit more long-term because he is a pending UFA. We know he's not coming back to Minnesota. It's just kind of buyer beware. You just really don't quite know what you're getting with Matt Dumba.
Yeah, the Florida Panthers are an interesting fit. Frank also listed the Minnesota Wild as a team who could just keep him as sort of that own rental kind of thing. He also had the Leafs, the Senators, and the Golden Knights as potential fits. But I like the idea of the, as we talked about yesterday, hockey trade going down between the Wild and the Panthers. We know Minnesota maybe wouldn't mind adding some scoring depth. Sam Reinhart, those are both names that Frank's brought up in the past. Even a guy who's not healthy right now, but Anthony Duclair. The Panthers kind of need to free up some money at some point. Maybe Minnesota could get an extra asset out of this move as well. There's a bunch of ways to go outside of Florida. Just quickly before we get to our all 32, is there another team out there? I kind of think the Leafs make a little bit of sense here, but cap-wise, I don't know if they can make it work. Is there another fit out there in your eyes?
Yeah, well, the Golden Knights make sense because if Mark Stone, if they're able to end up using LTIR, he could work there, and they've been depleted on the blue line. They could use some depth there.
Every day, a new deadline countdown article up at dailyfaceoff.com. So make sure you keep it locked there and here on the show where we break it all down. One of the hottest teams in the NHL is unsurprisingly the Colorado Avalanche. And Peter Baugh from The Athletic is with us. So let's get to today's edition of the All 32. It's the All 32 presented by our friends over at Montana's. Peter, it is quite the turnaround for the Colorado Avalanche, a team that was outside of the playoffs a couple of weeks ago, and then, ho-hum, 6 wins in a row. What's led to this turnaround for the Avs?
Yeah, I think a bit of it is just kind of staying the course, and their shooting percentage was really low during that stretch. Now they're finishing some of their chances. They've gotten a little bit healthier. Val Nichushkin's back. It looks like they're going to get some help in the near future with Manson and Byram coming back. So just kind of it's been a culmination of things starting to go their way and really honing in on defensive details and kind of playing more consistent. I mean, it's a cliche, but the full 60 minutes. They in a lot of those games that they lost during the stretch, they either had leads or were playing well for 40-minute stretches of the game and then would just have one disastrous period. And they've kind of found a way to eliminate that, and that's led to them rattling off all these wins.
Peter, you touched on it quickly about getting some players back. Obviously, injuries have been a big detriment to this Colorado team this year. I mean, Landeskog's the first one you look at right off the bat, but really it's been, to me, the depletion of that blue line. You look at Manson and Byram and even Makar now missing some time. It looks like these players might be tracking towards All-Star break, returning after that to get back in the lineup, maybe before for some. But if that's really the case, how do you think that might alter what the Colorado Avalanche might do heading towards the trade deadline and bolstering this club?
Yeah, I think it could have a huge impact. Honestly, when I look at the Avalanche and the trade deadline, I ask two questions. One, where are they in the standings and how are they playing? And then two, are they going to be fully healthy? Does this team believe Gabriel Landeskog is going to be back at some point this season, which right now they do? And if the answer is that they are playing well heading into the deadline and that they think they're going to have all their guys back, then I think you could see this team be pretty aggressive, despite the fact that the farm system's a little depleted. They don't have a ton of draft picks outside of their first rounders. It's not going to be easy for them to make moves, but this is a team that's in the cup contention window, and I'm pretty sure no one would want to see them, especially if they're at full strength. If Landeskog's back, if you have your blue line fully healthy, they're a tough team to go against, and I think that they would want to get even tougher if they foresee that being the case.
Well, let me allow you to throw on your Joe Sakic hat here and talk a little bit about what they could be looking for at the deadline. There are some big fish out there. You think of Jonathan Toews, Bo Horvat, Ryan O'Reilly down the middle. Could you see Joe Sakic going after one big name, or is this a situation where they maybe want to add two or three kind of B-level pieces?
I think it depends on how the market shapes up. I mean, we've seen in the past that Sakic isn't afraid to go look at the big names. I think the Avs, it's pretty clear they were in the Claude Giroux sweepstakes last year. Giroux wanted to go to Florida. It wasn't ever in the cards for him to come to Colorado. But I think if you read all the reporting and even listened to what Joe Sakic said publicly, like, they were interested and they made calls, and I think they were probably ready to offer a pretty penny for him. So you could see them going for a big name. In the past, this has not been a team that acts super recklessly with their assets. Joe Sakic hasn't traded a first round pick ever, except for Darcy Kemper when they kind of had to because they didn't have a goalie. And so I think you could see them make an aggressive move, but I also think that if the right move isn't there, that they could just go for a few smaller moves. I wonder about a guy like Sean Monahan, who probably is going to cost less than a Bo Horvat, but could still be a solid contributor if he's healthy. You look at maybe James Van Riemsdyk, if you're content with a second line of fully healthy Landeskog, Rodriguez, Nichushkin, and then you can add James Van Riemsdyk to your third line. Like, there are definite possibilities that they have to kind of bolster the depth of this team. I think the big thing is whether or not Landeskog is fully healthy, and if they kind of expect to be back to where they were heading into last playoffs, which is having a team that had a lot of elite players that was fully healthy.
Man, Evan Rodriguez, you look at that guy for $2 million. It's crazy to think where they might be without him. Hey, what a free agent pickup by Sakic.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a classic example of a guy who probably could have gotten more money out there, but I think he wanted – I get the sense that the market maybe didn't shape up the way that he was hoping, and this was kind of a 1 year, go play on a really good team, play with good players, and then you hit free agency again next year, and he's done everything in his power to make sure he'll be in good position to make some good money next summer.
Yeah, I think there'll be a pretty solid market for him in July. The All 32 brought to you by our friends at Montana's. Today is Wednesday. You can head to their website, check out all their daily deals, but Wednesdays mean all you can eat ribs at Montana's. Yeah, those just look fantastic. I know you two are both St. Louis, Missouri boys, so you know a good rack of ribs when you see them. Montanas.ca. Peter, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you both.
Big thanks to Peter Baugh for joining us today on the All 32. Mike, we are moving along to our daily Faceoff inbox question. Hashtag AskDFO. Yesterday, in his 1,222nd career game, Corey Perry scored 2 goals. This guy has been around seemingly forever. He's had a long storied career. The question is, how many more years do you think this guy has left in the tank?
Yeah, it's a good question because his last contract was a 2-year deal with Tampa Bay Lightning. And at 37 years old, at this stage of his career, I mean, at the beginning of the season, he was playing 12 to 14 minutes. He's kind of dropped back to 8 to 10. Really, Tyler, he's a power play specialist. 11 of his 18 points for Corey Perry have come on the power play, including 5 of his 8 goals. Like last night, it was only credited as 1 power play goal. The other one was right as the power play ran out. That's what he does. So, I mean, I think Corey Perry could play at least another 2 years, 3 years, but it's going to be in a very specific role. I don't know if it's with Tampa. but I could see some contender out there that needs a good net front presence, veteran presence, looking at Corey Perry and thinking, this is a guy who would help our lineup. And at the cost, $1 million or under, Tyler, why wouldn't you make that play?
Yeah, I think from a bunch of team perspectives, it would make sense. I wonder about him, though. You know, he has his Stanley Cup ring from earlier in his career. He's had a bunch of success. Is it crazy to think that maybe his future would depend on how well the Bolts do this year? Like, if this team wins a Stanley Cup, Corey Perry adds another ring to the collection, that's probably good enough for him. Like, a guy who's made as much money as he has over the course of his career, does he want to go pack up the family, move him back to wherever would be looking for his services? Or does he go, man, I've won a ton, got a lot of money in the bank, I'm good?
Yeah, especially considering he's been the bridesmaid now, 3 years in a row between Montreal, Dallas, and Tampa, not taking home a second Stanley Cup. At some point, it's like having 4 boys or 4 girls, and you keep trying for that opposite sex on the 5th, and you get yet another of them, right? At some point, you got to cut your losses and call it a day.
Yeah, killer analogy by Mike McKenna. Let's move along to our PointsBet Daily Bets, brought to you by our friends at PointsBet Canada. Another split yesterday on the betting front for me, so I'll look to finally grab that illustrious sweep. Let's dig into things, courtesy of PointsBet Canada, starting with that matchup between the Vancouver Canucks and the Seattle Kraken. The Vancouver Canucks are 1-4 on the road so far this month. They are playing in the second of back-to-backs, where they have not shown that well so far this season. The Seattle Kraken, on the other hand, have a winning record at home so far in the month of January. And if you're going to give me that kind of juice on the puck line, I am going to take it all day. Plus 145 is a great spot for the Kraken, who are hosting a Canucks team that is playing on the second of back-to-backs. The second play I like, I'm staying in the Western Conference, staying in the Pacific Division, looking at the Edmonton Oilers, massive favorites against Columbus. There's no value there. I'm not laying minus 155 to take a team on the puck line, but there is a player I like in this game, and it is Zach Hyman. He has 8 assists in his last 5 games, 8 apples in his last 5. And you're going to give me minus 130 on him to pick one up in a game where they should score a ton against the Columbus Blue Jackets, and Evander Kane is out of the lineup. So that means Hyman might get a few more minutes with the big guns in this game. I like Hyman to grab an assist, and I also love his shot prop. What the heck? We'll go all in on Zach Hyman. He's hit this shot prop in 3 of his last 5, but again, with no Evander Kane, that means more primetime minutes for Zach Hyman. The NHL's first star of the week is red hot, and I have no problem backing him with a couple of bets this evening. Mike, it is garbage time, and I think you're gonna like what I have pulled up here, because I'm gonna handle this. But a great video thrown up on Twitter yesterday by the wife of Jeff Carter. Just take a watch.
And that's one of the best players in the league. So we'll get this.
I know, I saw it.
I always watch the What?
Does it look like that?
Did you look through? No way!
I've been waiting. I always wanted to get your card.
Yeah.
For those of you watching it on the podcast version of
You want me to sign your card?
Yeah. Wait. 6 stars, please.
And that's
So Jeff Carter, his son,
adorable.
his wife says, saves all his money up for hockey cards and has been waiting to get his dad's card in a pack. And he finally got it, asked his dad if he could sign it as well. Mike, I know you're a guy who you extended your playing career because you wanted your daughters to remember you and have memories of you as a hockey player. So this has just got to tug at the heartstrings.
It really does, man. Like, my daughters still can't believe that there's hockey cards out there that I'm on. I can't believe it, honestly, man. It's pretty surreal. But, they don't get them in packs any longer, but occasionally we come across one here or there, and it's always a big thrill for them. And it's kind of funny, though, Tyler, like, you think about how hesitant hockey players are to use their Instagram or Twitter feeds for anything. You know who really does is the wives and girlfriends. Like, they're the unofficial PR people of the players, which it's just another hockey thing, right? Like, your personality is being shown off by somebody else, not yourself, because we can't be selfish and self-promote in hockey, and heaven forbid that. So this was a really, really cool moment, though, man. Like, I feel that as a parent big time. That's a cool deal for the Carters.
Yeah, I love that video, and great on the Carters for sharing that along as well. That's going to be a wrap on today's edition of Daily Face-Off Live. Shout out to our friends at Montana's and PointsBet Canada and at Peter Baugh for joining us from The Athletic to talk a little Colorado Avalanche. Myself and Frank Saravalli live in studio together the rest of the week, so you won't want to miss that In the meantime, enjoy your Wednesday night, and we'll chat again tomorrow.
Thanks for tuning in to Daily Faceoff Live. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.